It's already on, ma'am.
City County Planning Commission, please come to order. Ms. Martin, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Unsold?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston? Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. Everyone's had a chance to review the November 7th summary minutes. Any corrections to those minutes? No corrections, I'd ask for a motion.
Move.
Thank you. And a second. Thank you.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance?
Did not understand my name.
Okay. Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Unsold? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Runner, I request that you order the record to include all statutory and regulatory provisions, the Commission's entire file for each application, and the qualifications of each staff witness. Further request that you administer the oath to each of those witnesses.
So ordered. Swear to tell the truth before this commission. I do. Thank you all. You also had the October financial report in your packet. Are there any questions on that? We'll move down to the preliminary subdivision and site development plans. Any questions on those? Letters of credit and performance bond. You have an amended agenda at your seat. Has 2 items on there now. Any questions on those 2 items? No questions. I'd ask for a motion.
So move.
Thank you. Thank you. We do not have an, oh, I'm sorry, let you call the roll.
That's
I'm gonna
okay.
move right along.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. We do not have any unfinished business. The first item tonight for public hearing is docket number 2019-46ZBG. Michael Poston and Mike Cornelius have filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 0.14 acre located at 875 Broadway from general business to central business with a general development plan. And that same property, the same applicants on docket number 2019-V28, they have applied for a variance at that property. We'll have the staff report from Ms. Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair Runner. We had a pre-application conference on April 25th for the property you see outlined here in yellow. As Chair Runner has already stated, that property is zoned general business. Its current use is commercial. Of course, it's just right up the road here. You got a lot of commercial there on Broadway, and then you get off the side a little bit. You got single-family, multifamily, and some vacant public institutional, so kind of a mix around there. Future land use map is commercial, and I'll leave this up so we can kind of refer to it as we go along. But the applicants are requesting to rezone the property to central business in order to expand the existing retail service use on the property. I'll get into that more in just a second, since you're probably thinking, well, if the use is not changing, why they have to rezone? But we'll get there. They're also requesting a variance of 13.5 feet from the required rear yard setback of 25 feet adjacent to a single-family residential district or use. So this property has been zoned general business as far back as we have records. The property is designated as commercial on the flume, and the proposed central business district is listed as a potentially compatible zone in that designation, and this body should determine if the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding area. So I'm going to go ahead and go on to page 2, where I'm only going to bring one thing to your attention there. Under the site characteristics review, you'll see the cultural or historical features, which we don't always have something there, but in this case, the existing structure located on the property was built in 1905. The site was once home to the C.B. Dobson and Son Grocery. However, this is not designated as a local historic site, nor is it listed on the National Register of Historic Places. I'm going to go on to page 3 and go over the development plan conditions that the applicants have submitted. Number 1, prohibited uses. The following uses shall be prohibited: bingo parlor, pawn shop, tattoo parlor, adult entertainment, or any sale or display of pornographic materials or adult books. Number 2, access. The property will continue to utilize the existing access points along Broadway Avenue, Kenton Street, and the alley located along the rear property line. Any changes to such access will be reviewed and approved by the Bowling Green Public Works Department. Number 3, preservation of existing historic structure. The existing structure is planned to be maintained in its current form. However, in the event the existing structure is ever replaced, the property will be subject to the building height, material, and orientation requirements outlined below in Development Plan Conditions 4, 5, and 6. Number 4, building height. Maximum building height shall be 50 feet. Number 5, building materials. The exterior of the structure will be consistent with the existing building construction and shall consist of brick, stone, drive-it, cement siding, wood siding, man-made stone, hardy, or other modern masonry materials. Number 6, building orientation. Any new structure located on the property shall have a front facade oriented toward Broadway Avenue. Number 7, signage. The existing signage on the property is planned to remain. Any future signage on the property will adhere to the zoning ordinance requirements for the central business zone. And number 8, hours of operation. Hours of operation shall be Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. The proposed general development plan meets the majority of the review criteria for site design and meets the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, with the exception of the item for which the variance is requested, which I will move on to in just a second. We'll finish the zoning part first. 16 items out of the comprehensive plan were evaluated or listed here for your review. The application complied with 7 of them. The others are left up to your determination. Those are LU 113, that the Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the area. LU 2, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is a high-quality development that includes design standards tailored to preserve the character of the area. LU 25, if the proposal will protect nearby established neighborhoods. LU 252 and HN 12, if the proposed infill development is compatible with the surrounding area. LU 253, if the proposal is an opportunity for revitalization and redevelopment. NCR 253, which deals with the historic structure, which I read that development plan condition, and so that's up to you all to determine compliance with that item. And HN1, HN13, if the proposal is a compatible infill development that will maintain or improve the existing character, pattern of development, and urban design within the area, and if it will strengthen existing neighborhoods and districts. So with that, we're going to go on to the variance portion of this application. The applicants are requesting a variance from a reference out of Article 4 that about additional setbacks adjacent to single-family residential districts or uses in the central business zone, among others. A side and rear yard setback, or side and rear yards will have a minimum setback of 25 feet when adjacent to a single-family residential district or zone. And going back to the land use here, you can see there across the alley, there is a yellow designated property, meaning that is a single-family residential use. Below that zoning ordinance reference, you'll see the KRS references for findings necessary for granting a variance. Happy to go over those if you all prefer. But the applicants did submit a narrative to address those findings, which I'll go ahead and read. The applicant said the existing lot is only 30 feet in width, which is unusually narrow compared to all of the other lots on the west side of Broadway Avenue on the same block between Kenton Street and Indianola Street. Given the narrow width of the lot, the only option to add on to the existing building is toward the rear portion of the property. Additionally, there are existing commercial buildings located closer to the alley than the proposed building addition. Therefore, the proposed addition will not alter the character of the area. Furthermore, the proposed addition will not be a nuisance to the public with the limited hours of operation that are included in the development plan conditions of the rezoning application. So, if you can see here, and maybe in your package you can see, there's a sorry, I should have brought that one up. There's a line drawn that shows this is where the setback would be. You'll see there's the alley here. Alleys are not considered legal road frontage, so therefore they aren't treated as a regular roadway, and so this single-family use back here is adjacent to this commercial property. So So there's the 25-foot setback, and they're requesting to encroach 13 and a half feet for that to be 11 and a half feet from the single-family use behind them there. I mentioned earlier about the use of the property. Yes, the vehicle audio electronics business is what they continue to do on this property, but the current structure doesn't meet the parking or the setbacks. It's a non-conforming structure, and so therefore they can't expand without rezoning. In central business, there's no parking requirement, so that would bring them into compliance with what they're wanting to continue to do. So with that, I'll go back to the first page. We have the points to consider: that the proposal is consistent with the flume and commercial category, that the proposed development complies with the majority of the items in the site characteristics review, with the exception noted relating to the rear setback for which the variance is requested. The proposed general development plan complies with the majority of the review criteria for site design and meets the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, except for that item for which the variance is requested. Compatibility of the proposed development should be determined by this body, and you all should also determine if the applicants have addressed the findings necessary for granting a variance and evaluate its impact to the public and character of the area. So that is all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicants are also here, and I'm sure they'd be happy to address any questions as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Could you clarify for me? So the plat for this property does not have a 25-foot setback. It's only because they're rezoning and adjacent to single family that the 25-foot setback comes into play. Am I understanding that correctly?
In order for them to go closer than what central business currently allows, when they're adjacent to single family, they have to, if they want to do that, a variance would have to be in place.
So another way to say it would be, when this was platted, it didn't anticipate a 25-foot setback, but it's a zoning, it is a zoning triggered setback. Would that be accurate? So
yes, I think I'm following you. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It's a standard set forth in the zoning ordinance when adjacent to a single-family use. That's just when that additional setback comes into play. Otherwise, in central business, the setback is 0 if you're not adjacent to single family.
Okay. And we talked about the alleyway. How wide is the alley?
I believe the pavement width varies, is what there's a 10-foot right-of-way, and then it says pavement width varies.
Okay.
So.
And does this setback take into consideration the alleyway? So another way to ask it, does this setback go to the single-family house behind, or does it go to the edge of this alleyway, or?
It's measured from the rear property line. So it is kind of unusual in that the alley makes it unusual because normally you wouldn't have that extra 10 feet of the alley before you would get to the property line.
Really, you have another 10 feet buffer.
Correct.
I think that's the way I should have asked the question. So this one is unusual in that there's an additional 10 feet there that possibly the zoning requirement may not have ever anticipated, because there's an extra 10 feet that separates this property from the existing residential, correct?
I would say yes, that is one unusual circumstance, and then the applicant referenced probably the other most common one too, is just the narrowness of the lot. They don't have as much room to develop as other lots typically found in that same zone. So those two items are kind of that unique circumstance.
Okay. So the other question is, are they planning on building all the way to the alley?
From what this shows, where the addition is shown, it is not going all the way to the alley, but the applicants may want to confirm that. Yeah.
If you get that dimension, that would be
I
great.
may be able to clarify that. The variance would only permit them to encroach.
Oh, yeah, they're only going 13 and a half.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
so
13
you're still
and a
gonna
half.
still gonna have 11 and a half feet plus the alley. So you're
Yes.
still gonna have 20, to the house over 25 feet.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Other questions for Ms. Ramsey? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anything the applicant would like to add? Do we have any questions for the applicant? Yes, please. You have a question? you'd state your name and address, please.
Michael Poston, Austin Raymer Road.
And you swear to tell the truth
Swear
before
to
this
tell the truth.
commission? Thank you.
Proposing an addition, are you going to light that area? Is there gonna be lights that could shine into the bedroom for the house back there?
Yeah, we've got lighting up on the edge right now, night lighting. I don't think it invades their privacy the way their house is sitting on the side there. And of course, we can always fire them down.
You just make them
be
downward.
non-direct.
Just to clarify, the zoning ordinance requires that any lighting that's installed be directed downward and inward and not trespass onto the adjacent residential property.
Well, it just looked like you were adding a 30-foot addition that's gonna go 30 foot back. And then you're asking for a variance of an additional 13.5 feet. So the lighting would be down, you're not gonna have any pole lighting or anything, it's just gonna be on the building and it's gonna be downward.
There's probably pole lighting on the utility pole out there, I believe. Is there?
But that's not your light.
No,
that's
just city
the
light
city
there.
light.
It's not right behind the building.
But his light will be down,
Yeah, I
by
mean,
zoning,
that's
has to
no
be
problem.
downward.
No problem to focus that down out of the way.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? Do we have any opposition to this request? No questions and no opposition. I'd ask for a motion, please. We need to address the zone change, and should that pass, we will act on the variance request.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon a general development plan docket number 2019-46ZBG. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and actions items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, request this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. We need a second. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
Okay, yes.
Commissioner Unseld? Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale? Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Houston? Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried. Our recommendation will be for approval, and now we will act on the variance request.
Make the motion to approve the request for a variance at 875 Broadway Avenue, docket number 2018-V28, a variance of 13.5 feet from the required rear yard setback of 25 feet adjacent to a single-family residential district or use. Testimony presented in this public hearing has shown that granting this variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, and will not alter the essential character of the general vicinity, and will not cause a hazard or nuisance to the public, and will not allow an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations.
Thank you. Second, thank you.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale? Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld? Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Houston? Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried. Thank you. The next item, docket number 2019-07 Flume Choice Rental Properties LLC has filed an application for a future land use map amendment on tracts of land containing approximately 0.38 acre located at 1224 and 1228 Indianola from moderate density residential to high density residential. And also concerning that same property, docket number 2019-47ZBG, the applicants have applied for a zone change to go from general business to RM4, which is multifamily residential with a general development plan. And
Thank you,
we
Chair
will have a
Runner.
staff report. Ms. Hurt, thank you.
Thank you. We had a pre-application conference on June the 20th for the properties you just mentioned located on Indianola Street. And this is an aerial view of the property. You can see that each tract contains an existing 2-unit structure. So currently, between the two properties, there are 4 units within the entire development. The current zoning of the property is general business, which permits development of multifamily uses utilizing the RM3 development standards in the zoning ordinance. And so the request this evening is to amend the future land use map and rezone the property in order to allow the construction of 2 additional multifamily units, 1 per property, for a total of 6 units. The current use of the property is multifamily residential, and the future land use designation is moderate density residential. So that is the current future land use designation. This category applies to areas developed for higher density, single-family detached and attached development, as well as semi-detached multifamily development such as duplexes, townhouses, apartment buildings, condominiums, and mobile home parks. Densities in this category should range between 3.5 and 13 dwelling units per acre. The proposed future land use map amendment is for high-density residential. This land use designation consists of areas occupied by multifamily housing, including higher density duplexes, townhomes, apartment buildings, and condominiums. Densities exceeding 8 dwelling units per acre are encouraged in this future land use category. And high density single family may also be acceptable at 5.5 dwelling units per acre. Below that, we have a reference to LU 1.1.4, which outlines the procedures to amend the future land use map. Those are there for your reference, and to address these items, the applicant supplied the narrative there that's in the middle of the page there on page 2. It states that the current use of the property is high-density multifamily. The surrounding area is mixed use with commercial, multifamily, and single-family uses. The property is in a transitional area from general business uses to multifamily uses. The change to high density is a natural transition from a commercial land use to a moderate density land use. So with that, I'm going to move on to the site characteristics review. Under layout, lot sizes, and setbacks, this is the proposed layout. There are 2 existing buildings located on the property. If this application to amend the future land use map and rezone the property is approved, there are existing spaces in both buildings in the basement level that they would then convert to 1 additional unit per building. So they would not be adding on to the existing buildings. They're proposing to convert already existing space within the existing buildings. Under transportation infrastructure, staff has noted that the properties have frontage on Indianola Street, and then there are also 2 alleys running alongside the property here, and then also along the rear portion of the property in this general location. Under site design and compatibility review, under the surrounding density, I'll jump back to the land use map here so you have a point of reference. The existing density for the 2 existing structures is 10.53 dwelling units per acre. The proposed density is 15.79 dwelling units per acre. The average density for the residential properties fronting Indianola in the immediate block between Broadway and East 13th, so that would just be the residential properties that are kind of just right here, kind of clustered in this general area. The density for those properties is 10.27 dwelling units per acre. And then looking at a more broader view, staff looked at the density for the residential properties in the area bounded by the US 31W bypass, Broadway, High Street, and East 14th, and that average density is 6.22 dwelling units per acre. Under the surrounding land uses, again referencing the land use map, you can see that the surrounding area is comprised of a mixture of multifamily residential, single-family residential, and commercial uses. And there are also a couple of public institutional uses in the area and an industrial use located nearby. Moving on to the development plan review and the development plan conditions. The applicant submitted 5 conditions. Number 1, the property will be developed with a maximum of 6 dwelling units with a total of 20 beds. Number 2, all buildings on the property will not exceed 2 stories, excluding the basement. Number 3, the exterior of all buildings located on the property shall be constructed of at least 80% brick, EIFS, stone masonry, or cementitious material on all sides. No plain face block is permitted. Number 4, the property will be developed with entrances that shall be coordinated and approved by the City of Bowling Green Public Works. And then number 5, all utility improvements shall be located underground. Moving on to the comprehensive plan review, on page 4, staff evaluated 15 items and found that the proposal complies with 5 of these items. There are 10 items that the Planning Commission should evaluate for compliance. The first of those looks at compatibility. That's LU 113. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the area. Next, we have LU2 and LU 2.1, which look at design standards and character of the area. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is a high-quality development that includes design standards tailored to preserve the character of the area. Next, LU 2.5, which looks at protection of nearby neighborhoods. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal will protect nearby established neighborhoods and if it complies with this item. Next, LU 252 and HN 1.2, which look at compatibility of infill development. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposed infill development is compatible with the surrounding area. Next, HN 1 and HN 1.3, which look at character and pattern of development. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is a compatible infill development that will maintain or improve the existing character, pattern of development, and urban design within the area, and if it will strengthen existing neighborhoods and districts. And then last, we have HN 2.1 and HN 4, which look at suitability and housing options. The Planning Commission should determine if the location of the planned development is suitable for the proposed housing type and if the proposed development is believed to enhance the array of housing options available in the area. And then in the staff review summary, I'll just go over a portion of that. As I've noted, there are 2 existing multifamily structures on the property. The sites were developed in 2015 and were not developed in accordance with the approved site layouts at the time the building permits were issued for both of the buildings. Since that time, the current owner of the property acquired both tracts and both buildings, and they're here this evening with this proposal. If approved, the revised site plan is an alternate to the originally approved site plan from the original permits in 2015, and if further developed, this concept plan as shown would meet the parking and landscaping requirements and would help to clean up the discrepancies that currently exist on the property. So thought that that was worth mentioning. And then back to page 1 under our points to consider. The Planning Commission should consider if the future land use map amendment is appropriate for these 2 parcels. Next, if the future land use map amendment to high density residential is approved, the proposal would be consistent with the future land use map and high density category. The proposed development complies with the majority of the site characteristics review criteria, and the proposed general development plan complies with some of the review criteria for site design and meets the minimum requirements in the zoning ordinance, and compatibility of the proposed development should be determined by the Planning Commission. I believe that's all for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioners?
Yes. Rachel, on page 3, point number 1, the property to be developed with a maximum of 6 dwelling units with a total of 20 beds. What does 20 beds mean?
So that would be the maximum number of bedrooms.
Bedrooms.
Overall,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
How many bedrooms are there right now?
I'm not sure. You would have to ask the applicant.
Okay.
I'm assuming it would be a maximum of 10 per building for a total of 20, but I'll defer to them. Yeah.
You may have answered this already in your statement, but just for my clarification, this is really already multifamily, but it's currently zoned as general business. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. It is zone general business, and within general business, you're allowed to develop multifamily at the RM3 development standards, which has a minimum lot area for the first unit and then additional square footage requirements for each unit over that first unit. So if you want to achieve more density on a particular piece of property and you've already maxed out your potential with RM3, your only option then would be to look at trying to rezone the property to RM4, which does not have a density cap, but it's also assuming that you're able to meet your required landscape buffers and provide the minimum parking on site to meet those minimum requirements.
And so they do meet those minimum requirements, the parking and the landscape buffer?
Yes, as shown on this concept plan, it would meet the requirements for the 6 units that are proposed.
And they are proposing this to not change the structure, just finish the basement. Do I understand that correctly?
Correct. There would be no changes to the structure. They would just be finishing already existing space within both structures. Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like there were a lot of single-family residences around that area.
I can jump.
Some business.
Yeah, I can jump back to the land use map. I wouldn't know the overall percentage, but you can kind of see there's a mixture of single family and multifamily, just kind of around the vicinity. But I wouldn't be able to say X percent or single family. I wouldn't know that off the top of my head.
It looked like driving around that some of this that was marked multifamily were still single-family looking facilities. So you would know if it's a single family living there or anything like that, or rental property or anything.
That I'm not sure, but I can at least speak to the land use map. It should be fairly accurate because we, in the last, I guess it would have been last year, we had to verify all of the addresses for the upcoming census. And so we looked at every single property in Warren County and did a door-to-door survey. So this should be fairly accurate.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there anything the applicant would like to add? Any questions for the applicant?
Could you address Mr. Warren's question about the number of beds? How many you currently have and how many you're going to be adding?
Let me swear you in before you answer. Your name
Brian
and address.
Carrico. I'm a partner member of Choice Rental Properties Owners. So yeah, currently there are 2 4-bedroom units in the facility. Each floor, the ground floor is a 4-bedroom, the second floor is a 4-bedroom, and the basement is almost exactly 50% of that footprint, and that will become a 2-bedroom. So 4, 4, and 2 per unit.
You're adding 4 bedrooms.
4 beds, 2 units.
Okay.
Yeah. Each building will gain an additional unit.
Yeah,
A
additional
2-bedroom.
2-bedroom.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. It's about a 900 square foot 2-bedroom unit, which is pretty typical.
Any other questions for the applicant? Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? Thank you. Yeah, we have a question. If you'll have a seat, sir, we'll swear him in and let him ask his question. If you'd state your name and address, please,
Ed Mosley, 3425 Montgomery Way.
and you swear to tell the truth.
Absolutely.
This,
I don't know if it's more of a question or if it's just more of a statement type thing. I've got the
Yes.
4 properties across the street from it, 1223, 27, 31, and 35. My biggest concern, it's kind of, I could go both ways here, honestly, because I'd love for the precedent to be set, like, hey, we can make this RM4 because anything else that if I were to ever come up here and say, hey, I'd like to do that, I'm like, this happened. But at the same time, parking is such a hot commodity up here around campus. I mean, it's nuts. I don't know when you all drove by this block of Indianola, but if you went by there now or anytime Saturday and Sunday, it's jam-packed. And I get it. I mean, I know he's wanting to put 2 apartments down there. I get that. I totally understand it. But I've got tenants now that park half a block away and walk to their house. You know, so I just feel like add 4 more bedrooms, here's what happens. And like I said, I know this block's jammed up. Then if you were 2 blocks down, you may not be the same. But it just, I feel like it's setting a potential to set a precedent of, you know, because I'm assuming these aren't, the one's 0.19, 0.18 acres, they're not being combined, are they? So they're being set, they're staying separate. So I mean, all of a sudden, you know, the potential to take 0.19 acres, 0.18 acres somewhere else and zone it to RM4 and add more parking or more beds, which leads to more parking. I don't know. If it was a half-acre tract, I wouldn't be questioning it at all. But I mean, such a small tract, what's it going to do for the future is what I'm thinking. But anyway, just my input.
thank you, sir. Thank you.
Rachel, if I count it correctly, in the front and the back, there's roughly 20 spots.
There are 21 spaces, or 21. Yeah, there's 8 along Indianola,
Yeah.
8, well, I don't have the site plan up anymore. 8 behind the existing buildings, and then along the alley there are 5 spaces. So there are 21 total on the property,
So-
proposed.
So we got 20, we're asking for 20 beds and we have 21 parking.
Which, to me, I kind of wonder, you know, when you get up to the 4 and 5 bedroom, the requirement for parking spaces stays the same ratio, 1 to 1, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, there's at least 8 guys that live over there, and I guarantee you, it's not 8 guys over there all the time. I mean, there's,
Oh, I
you know
understand
what I'm
what you're
saying?
saying with visitors
It's just,
and
you know,
stuff
it's just,
like
and that's when the parking lot gets jam packed for the weekends and at night. I mean, it just, and like I said, I understand his need to do it. I totally get that, but it's just the parking. It's just huge.
I think from our standpoint, we can't really look at visitors all the time. I mean, I think we have to look at the amount of beds and the amount of parking we have, and it looks like he's fortunate to have parking in the front of his where it's not all street parking.
Right, that was a whole different, when that got built, it should have never, well, anyway, that was a whole different story.
So just for clarification, this is a question for staff. He meets the parking requirements for this, correct? Okay.
That is correct.
Have any other questions or comments before I ask for a motion?
So is this a boarding house? It's not apartments, it's boarding house, and you just rent out bedrooms?
We lease each unit independently, so all 4 of each unit are on one lease. So it could be a family, it could be 2 or 3 college students, it could be young professionals, it could be a mix.
So what is it? Is it 8 college students, or is it a family? Or is it
Currently, it's a mix between college students and young professionals.
okay,
Single, there's no families currently.
okay, that's what my question is.
Sure.
So if each one of them has a guest, there's not enough parking for all their guests. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's not 40 spots, no.
Other questions? Thank you, sir. Our first action will be to address the Flume amendment, and should that pass, we will talk about the zone, go for action on the zone change request. So I would ask for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment docket number 2019-7 Flume. Based on testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed Flume amendment has met the directive to amend the Flume and is outlined in LU 114 in the comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston? Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
No, I don't think this meets the characteristics, and I think that would put way more strain in that area than what's needed.
Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Vitale? Commissioner Unseld? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried with opposition. Next, we need to act on the zone change request. I'd ask for a motion.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with a condition upon the general development plan docket number 2019-47BG. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Second, thank you.
Commissioner Houston?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
No, because it only meets 5 of the characteristics, and I think we're missing 10 here, and I just have a really concern about way too much traffic and changing the characteristics that's already there.
Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Unseld?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale? Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried with opposition. Our recommendation will be for approval. Thank you. Brings us to new business.
Yes, we do have a need for a short executive session for a personnel matter, and Counselor Moore will cite the statute.
motion might be to go into closed session for the purpose of discussions or hearings which might lead to the appointment, discipline, or dismissal of an individual employee.
I would ask for that motion, please. I'll make that motion. Thank you. And a second? Thank you.
Commissioner Rich? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Vitale? Yes, Commissioner Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Unseld? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vokert? Commissioner Gay?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison? Commissioner Houston? Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. No, we'll have to repeat it. We're just now coming out of closed session.
I move that the personnel changes be approved as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. You just,
Favor indicate by saying
Aye.
aye. Opposed?
motion carried. Thank you. Anything else? You all, not, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.